All right, 3, 2, 1. Hello, this is our CSCE 492 project. We made a game called Steel Exile. My name is Austin Capuccio.
My name is Benjamin Goodman.
My name is Matthew Milani.
My name is Nolan Polino.
My name is Reagan Tibbetts.
All right, so right now we're going to start off with the use case that our project was aiming to accomplish. So we wanted to make a very easy to pick up game that was a top-down roguelike, similar to the vein of, let's say, Binding of Isaac or Legend of Zelda. So we wanted to give our users an easy to pick up game, something that was very simple, very quick. It's a 10-level experience, so anyone can pick it up anytime they want to, and it allows for consistent progression. So when players play the game multiple times, they unlock more upgrades, which allows them to go further and further in our game. So you just have this constant expansion. So it can be a very quick pickup, or it can be something that you invest in long term. So let's say, for example, we had our persona, Philip Rivers. Philip Rivers is a 29-year-old corporate analyst out of New York. He graduated from the University of South Carolina in 2016 and has continued to pursue his career in business ever since. His childhood was filled with top-down shooters and dungeon crawlers. With his job being very strict at a very stressful company, he needs an outlet when he gets off work. Philip is a family man with a very kind personality, but video games bring out his competitive side. So we wanted to make something that kind of had the goal of someone who was looking for maybe a casual gaming experience, but has some options for a more competitive experience through our difficulty options. So for instance, you can start out on a very easy mode with our game, or you can move on to a normal or harder difficulty, depending on what kind of challenge you want.
All right, now for some of our technologies we used. Our main technology that we used for this project was the Unity Game Engine. The Unity Game Engine is a open source and free to use software that allows for students like us to come together and create a game. In turn, with Unity, we also use GitHub, more specifically GitHub LFS, which stands for Large File Systems, which allowed us to store our entire Unity project within GitHub. Another thing Unity was very helpful for was our ability to use it collaboratively. When we all created our Unity project together, we used Unity scenes to be able to have our own scenes to work on our own parts of the game. For example, while I was working on items, Ben was working on enemies, and without having to interrupt each other's flow, we were all working on our own scenes, and therefore I can test my items while he can test his enemies. And eventually, when we wanted to come and bring it all together, everything was available to us through GitHub LFS, and when we have all of the parts of our puzzle ready to go, we actually then just had to do the level design and creation through Unity, which was super simple. So now let's finally take a look at what we built.
All right. So one of the unique things about Unity is that it has its own built-in UI objects. So in order to correctly use those in a manner that is responsive, simple, but yet creative, we had to implement a lot of scripts in the buttons. If a user were to, say, scroll over a button, it will glow outer to show responsiveness and interaction between the player and the screen. Now, all these buttons move in between scenes of a game. So, say if a player were to click on options, they would be brought to the options menu. If you think about the average user, there are a couple things that they might have differently than one another. Some person might be playing on a different monitor at a different resolution, and there they are able to change their full screen settings as well as change their game's resolution, which automatically adapts to any of their present and available resolutions on their monitors or laptop screens. Now, every button allows you to go back to a certain menu. We have a controls menu if you were looking for a refresher on what buttons do what in the game. If we go back to options and go to gameplay, here in gameplay we have a difficulty option on a drop-down menu. The player has the ability to choose easy, normal, or hard. Each one scales up the difficulty of the enemies while keeping player stats stagnant. The player also has the ability to enable cheats, which allow them to kill enemies instantly and not take damage nor lose mana. The final options are audio. In audio, the player has the ability to change the master volume, which includes both the music volume and the FX. Or, if the user so chooses, they can lower just the music, keeping FX at a specific level. If you go back to the options menu, the Reset Game button brings up a panel which allows you to reset all of your progress. This includes both settings and character progression. And yes, we'll completely empty those two.
Back on the main menu, we can talk about our progression through the game. When you're playing, each run through the dungeon is almost the same run. We have some variation within it. However, the main variation comes from your skills. When we click on the skills options, we're presented with two more options. We can either go to our skill tree or our stat upgrade, with both have different ways to upgrade your player. In the skills tree options, you see we have 3 different progression lines. This first progression line is adding the ability for the player to dash. At first, you unlock the dash, and it lowers the time between the dash. Then you get longer dashes, and then eventually you get a swift dash, which makes you invincible while you're dashing. Our next skill you can have is unlocking multi-attack. So when you swing your sword, shoot your staff, or shoot your bow and arrow, it will do 2 of those things at once. We start off with taking only 60% of the normal player damage, up to 80, up to 90, and up to a full 100, where eventually it turns into a triple attack. Our last skill we have is Lifesteal. Lifesteal allows you to, when killing an enemy, take 10% of their total health at the first level, which eventually turns into 20, 30, and finally 50%. These are unlocked with coins that you find in the dungeon. As you can see, our first multi-attack costs 50 coins. If I try to unlock it, it does not let me. And our very last upgrade takes all the way up to 350. We made this become more expensive as you go, so it is more balanced. And when you first run through the game, you won't be able to unlock everything right away. You'll unlock it as you need it. If we go back and check out our stat upgrades, we have 6 stats you can upgrade: your max health, your damage, your max mana, your mana regen, your attack speed, and your movement speed. From the bottom, you can see that each upgrade costs 10 points. Currently, we have 0 because we reset all of our progress. But as you click on each of these, your player is upgraded. If we come back and we upgrade our damage with 10 points, it will turn into 3. And all of these are uncapped except for your movement speed, which we felt had a cap of 7.5. So you can upgrade it just a couple of times. We chose to have everything be uncapped to allow the player to feel like they're progressing up to a point that they want to. If they become too good from playing too much on the same profile, they can always go back, reset all their stats, and play through the game again as a new player.
All right, so now I want to talk a little bit about the trophies we have in our game. So if we click on the trophies menu, so it brings up 3 different achievements that we have. So if you scroll over each of the achievements, it gives you a brief description of them. And we want to kind of create a harder goal for players who have already completed the game to shoot for. These trophies are not for the faint of heart and will most likely take you a couple of runs to obtain and some practice. So for the first trophy on the left, this one is without a doubt the hardest trophy. This is kill 100 enemies without taking damage.
Now that we've gone through all the options in the menu, if we hit play,
it is me, Finnegan.
We are in our choose your character screen. Currently the game has 3 characters. Our first character is Finnegan, our knight character. He wields a sword.
Beware of the bow.
Next we have Celestina. She is our archer character. She has a bow and arrow. And our next character is Dax. He is our mage, and he wields a staff that shoots fireballs. For this run, we're going to pick Celestina. When we hit start, we're going to be loaded into a tutorial section of the game. You remember earlier we restarted our progress, so we thought the game needed a tutorial to teach the player how to play the game if you've never played before. You press WASD to move, up, down, left, right on the keyboard to attack. This isn't an enemy. Our goal is to kill it. Once we kill it, you'll see our first example of an item in the game. This is actually a passive item. This is one of 27 passive items. If we hover over it, it tells us what the item is. It's a leather chest plate, and its ability, it gives us 10% more health. We're going to press E to pick that up. These, when we kill the enemy, are coins. When you pick those up, you see our little indicator that we're getting some coins. This is a chest in the dungeon. They spawn randomly. If you press E, it will open. You can also find potions in the dungeon. This is our first example of an active item. We have 3 of these. We hover over it. It tells us that it's a health potion. It will give us 10 HP. Press E to pick that up. Then we press Q to use the potion. The game lets us know that it cannot be taken between floors of the dungeon. You see we took some health up there in the top left, so if I hit Q, we restore our health, and we're going to walk through the door to finish the tutorial.
All right, so it's Ben again. I was in charge of primarily enemies and level design for Steel Exile, so I'm going to talk about some of the enemies that we have inside the game. So starting out, we have 2 enemies here displayed. One is a goblin, and one is a moving spike ball. The way the goblin's code works, essentially, is he will move towards the player until eventually colliding with the player. Once that happens, the player will take a small amount of damage. And then the way that the patrolling enemy works, essentially there are 3 points in a triangle that the enemy will move through, and then will periodically shoot spikes at the player that will damage them whenever they're hit. So as far as Steel Exile goes, I wanted to make a experience that kind of requires the player to explore, similar to the vein of The Legend of Zelda. So whenever I made levels, I tried to make it such that keys that open the boss door are on the polar opposite end of wherever the boss door may be. So right now we saw that Austin wasn't able to get into the boss room, which is the room that was covered in red fog, because he wasn't able to get through the door. So if he continues to progress through the dungeon, eventually we'll see that he'll find a key, which is also marked orange on his mini-map in the bottom right corner. So if Austin collects that key, then he'll be able to open the boss door by pressing E next to it. Additionally, we do also have some other items that are showing up on the minimap. For enemies, that'll usually be red triangles, and then for other collectibles like chests, that will be golden squares. Now we can see that Austin used the key and he was able to get through the door, and then once he collides with that red fog, he'll be fighting a boss. So this is one of the 2 bosses we have in Steel Exile. This is the Knight. What he does is kind of similar to the vein of the Goblin. He'll run around and try to chase the player. Once he collides with the player, he'll do contact damage, and then he also has one of 2 moves that he can do additionally. One of them is a charge, and one of them is projectile fire. If the charge hits the player, he'll do damage, and if the projectile hits the player, it will also do damage. That's alright, happens to the best of us.
As you can see, my performance in the game wasn't too great. I died to the boss, but that's okay. That is one of the main components of our game, Steel Exile. Because it is a rogue-like game, when you're within that genre, dying is actually an integral part of the game. I went as far as I could with the skill set I had. Now it's time for me to see if I can upgrade myself. As you can see, I only killed 3 enemies, so I received 3 points, so I can't make any upgrades here. In my skill tree, I only have 5 coins, so I can't make any upgrades here either. So it's looking like I just have to get back into the fray of the game. The chests we have pre-placed around each level of the game. However, their item that's inside and whether they will spawn or not are random. So if I walk up to it and press E, we found that leather chest plate we actually found in the tutorial. As you can see, my health went down as it looks like, but it's actually just my max health increasing. We don't allow the player, when they're increasing their max health, to just get free health out of it. We want the game to stay challenging.
So here we can see the 3rd and final enemy of Steel Exile. It is a projectile-based enemy. Essentially, the way that the code works is that the skeleton will continue to approach the player until it reaches a certain distance away, and then will start firing arrows. It will fire arrows regardless of how far away the player is, but it will stop its moving towards the player until it reaches a certain range.
So after the boss has been finally killed, you can take your teleport, or you can teleport to a new area called the item shop, and once you click E to enter the item shop, you'll be able to buy specific items with the coins that you picked up in the run previously. So right now we have 20 coins, so the max amount of stuff that we can buy right now is the wand and then another potion. And each of these items, you can see the item description below.
As you can see, after we got out of the item shop and we bought the mana potion, it appears right in front of us. And that seems to wrap us up for all of our main features, except a few. One I want to talk about real quickly is something we added to the game for players who just want to see the entire game. We call it God Mode. If you just press G on your keyboard at any point, you get this note that you're transcending, you go gold, and all of a sudden your stats are boosted. As you see, we're doing 1,000 damage, we're moving a lot quicker, and our attack speed is not limited whatsoever. Something important to note with this mode is if you hit G again and turn it off, you go back to being mortal, and none of your data is actually saved while you're in God mode. This allows you to maybe get through some pesky parts of the dungeon without actually having to go back and enable cheats, or in our main menu, or ruining your progression. All right, thank you so much for watching our final demo of our game Steel Exile, the top-down roguelike dungeon crawler. We hope you enjoyed, and please let us know how much you like it. Thanks.